The question is that this House do now adjourn. Steve Double.
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker. And I'm incredibly grateful to have the opportunity to bring this debate to the House this evening on what might be considered a fairly niche subject, but it is a subject that is incredibly important to many people in my constituency and indeed across Cornwall. It was actually suggested to me, Mr Deputy Speaker, that my opening line for this debate tonight should be "Never mind the pollocks, here's the adjournment debate." But of course I wouldn't possibly comment in that way. But can I begin by actually thanking the Minister? I'm very grateful for the Minister to be responding to this debate this evening, because I want to acknowledge he's been incredibly willing to engage and meet with colleagues who have been seeking to raise their concerns about this issue for many weeks now, and thank him for his engagement. I hope it's not going to end now, but I want to acknowledge that he has been seeking to work with us to find a solution to this particular challenge, because I know he's aware that the decision to have a zero total allowable catch for pollock, the decision that was made in December to take effect from the 1st of January, is having a hugely damaging effect on the livelihoods of many fishermen in Cornwall. It's estimated that upwards of 40 boats that either operate out of or land their catch into Mevagissey, Newquay and Foy in the constituency I represent rely on pollock catch for a very significant amount of their income. One family to mention, that the Hunkin family, who I know have been covered in the media, have said that they stand to lose around £200,000 this year alone, which represents about 2/3 of their total revenue from the decision to have zero quota for pollock. But actually it's an issue that is affecting fisheries across Cornwall. For instance, in my honourable friend, the member for North Cornwall's constituency, boats that operate from Padstow and Port Isaac, from boats that operate from the constituency of my honourable friend, the member for South East Cornwall, from Looe and Polperro, and in the Far West from Newlyn. This decision is having a serious impact. And there's no doubt that although pollock is caught from many ports around the UK, it has a disproportionate impact on the inshore fishing fleet that operate out of Cornwall. I think we all accept that the recommendation from the Council for the Exploration of the Seas, the ICES, that pollock should have a zero quota, put ministers and DEFRA officials in an incredibly difficult position. And the reality was that, having made that recommendation, it would have been incredibly difficult for the UK to not go along with that. And I think we all acknowledge that. But the result of that decision was that many fishermen literally had their ability to make a living taken away from them overnight. And to put this in perspective, the 570 tonnes of pollock quota that was available to vessels operating from Cornish ports represents a loss of £2.3 million to the Cornish economy. And it's not just fishermen, it's those businesses that serve and support the fishing industry in the supply chain. For example, the harbour master of Mevagissey, Andrew Trevarton, has estimated that the loss of pollock quota will result in a loss of 20% of Mevagissey Harbour's income. And there is no prospect of an easy way of actually replacing that income. And it's very difficult to overstate how important having a thriving operating fishing port at Mevagissey is to the economy of that village, which attracts about 800,000 visitors every year, largely because it is a living, operating fishing port. It's not a museum, it actually is a thriving part of the fishing industry in Cornwall. I'll happily give way to my honourable friend.
Mr. Deputy, can I commend first of all the honourable gentleman for St Austell in the UK for bringing this forward. I spoke to him beforehand. And issues with the pollock fishing does seem to be more of an issue, as he rightly says, in the southwest, where in Northern Ireland we do not have the same concerns. Despite this, there are clear issues with how only allowing certain fish to be caught as a bycatch is impacting the livelihoods of certain and local fishermen. Does the Honourable Gentleman agree that should these issues start to arise further afield than the southwest, i.e. fishing ports within Northern Ireland as an example, that whatever decision the Minister will take tonight to help and assist the Honourable Gentleman what he puts forward, that the same grants and the same opportunities should rightfully extend to all areas of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland?
I'm very grateful to my friend for the intervention. I think the case I'm making tonight is for a very, very specific issue that we are facing, the impact of the removal of the pollock quota at such short notice is having on a very specific part of our fishing industry. I think what we all want to see is a thriving fishing sector right across the United Kingdom, and fishermen and businesses to support the sector able to thrive and be profitable right across the UK. And we need policies in place that enable that to happen. But what we're facing right now in Cornwall and in other parts of the southwest is very specific, related to the very sort of short decision, the short time frame that was given to vessels, to fishermen to adapt because of the way that this quota went from 1,500 tonnes to zero virtually overnight. I'll happily give way.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way, and I congratulate my constituency neighbour for bringing this very much needed adjournment debate tonight. One of the fishermen mentioned to me that this feels like his right leg has been amputated and that he is now trying to get through the rest of the year on crutches until we can find a way through this current situation that we're in. Would he agree with me that all of the options that we've been offered so far will only mean that there's a displacement of different species and different ways of catching fish, and therefore it won't actually be any help to the long-term prospects of the fishing industry in Cornwall?
I'm very grateful to my honourable friend and neighbour for making that point, which is in fact the very next point I was going to come on to in my notes, which is some of the suggestions that have been offered to the fishermen that have been affected by this decision is that they can switch to targeting other species. But I think the simple truth is that it's very simple to say, but it's not that simple to do. Partly because of the lack of time, that there was no lead up to this decision, it was literally 2 weeks' notice. And switching to catch other species, you need different equipment. And much of that equipment has got a lead time of several months before it can be delivered. And as my honourable friend my honourable friend makes, also switching to a different species simply displaces that catch from other vessels. So the vessels who work hard targeting that other species then have to reduce their catch and maybe then look for something else, which then has a knock-on effect. So whilst I appreciate the sentiment that can be said that, well, these fishermen need to go and catch something else, it really isn't that simple, and certainly with such short time frame to adjust, it's unrealistic to expect that to happen. There are real concerns and questions about the data on which this decision was made. I think it's accepted that pollock stocks were diminishing and that quotas were being reduced for some time now. But to suddenly go from 1,500 tonnes to zero in one go, when previously we've seen quota drop by a few hundred tonnes a year, was what shocked the industry. And the data, as we understand it, has largely been gathered from the catch of trawlers. But again, it's well understood that the main place that you can find and catch pollock is actually on reefs and wrecks where trawlers can't fish. So there are real questions about how accurate the data that has been used to make this recommendation is actually based on the reality of the current stock of pollock that is available. And equally, fishermen I've spoken to are incredibly frustrated, some of them even angry, because what they tell me is that for several years now they've been saying to the MMO, we're concerned about pollock stocks, and therefore we would like to see an increase in the minimum catch size, or an increase in the mesh size for the nets, or to have a close season for 1 or 2 months a year to protect the stock so that we don't have to take this drastic action. Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Order, order.
I beg to move that this House do now adjourn.
The question is that this House do now adjourn. You timed it perfectly, former Whip. Steve Double.
Very grateful, Mr. Deputy Speaker. But when they put this to the MMO said, oh, there's no need for that, we're not concerned, we don't think those measures are necessary. But it looks like the fishermen were right all along, because if these measures had been brought in gradually over the last few years, then maybe we would have been in a position where we could have had a sustainable quota for pollock without this sudden drop to zero. I know the Minister has been looking at ways to try and support those who have been affected so severely by this decision. And I do welcome the steps that he's taken, the work that he's been doing, and the measure that he has brought forward through the Fisheries and Seafood Scheme to expedite applications from those who have been affected by the reduction in pollock stock to help them diversify. That is very welcome. I would just ask him to clarify, because in the letter that was sent out on the 23rd of February, it did say that that scheme would be available to all those who were affected by the reduction in pollock quota, including, I believe, netters. But then in the press release that went out later that day, it seemed to suggest that it was only available to handliners and under 10 boats. So if the Minister could just clarify exactly who the expedited FSS scheme is available to, that would be very welcome. I'll happily give way at that point.
Helpful to him to do that while he's on his feet. I think what I was trying to establish was a priority list, if you like. So those under 10 metres and those who are handliners would be prioritised over those who were over 10 metres or who were netting. That does not mean that they are excluded. It just means that we would prioritise those other boats.
I am very grateful to the Minister, and that's very helpful to have that clarification. The scheme that's also been brought forward through the Centre for Environment, Fisheries and Aquaculture Science, I think we'll call them CFAS, because that's a lot easier to say, to work with fishermen to gather accurate data about the current stocks of pollock that will hopefully help inform future decisions. Now, again, this is very welcome. Using fishermen who have lost their catch through this decision and paying them to gather data is absolutely very welcome. But again, I think we need to acknowledge that this is only going to assist a relatively small number of vessels through this scheme. Both of these schemes are very welcome, but I think it has to be said that they are not going to go far enough and will not help anywhere near the number of boats that have been affected or mitigate the real losses that are being experienced. There's basically two things I think that we need to focus on. One is how we can help and support now those who have been so badly affected by this decision to protect their livelihoods in the immediate future for the loss of income that they have experienced virtually overnight with no time to prepare for that. And secondly, to lay out a pathway where we can start to work to see pollock quota returned in a sustainable way as quickly as possible. Now, I would urge the Minister to prioritise work with the Specialised Committee for Fisheries, where I understand the UK and the EU will be discussing pollock as a priority topic later this month. And this is a first chance to review the data and to make requests to ICES for refinement of the science and management, particularly of recreational fishers, which I know the Minister knows is a real concern of many commercial fishermen, that there seems to be no restrictions or regulations around recreational fishers when it comes to pollock. The fishermen want to see the UK engaging robustly and confidently with the UK as an independent seafaring nation that we are, and to make the most of this opportunity. I also understand that the Cornish Fisheries Producer Organisation have a meeting with DEFRA and CFAS later this month ahead of the SFC meeting, and I really hope that the Minister and his officials will take that opportunity to really listen to the concerns of our fishing representatives and to understand the real impact that this is having, and to work with them to find a way forward. So what we need is urgent help now. Fishermen who have lost a major part of their income overnight through no fault of their own. They have ongoing business costs, they have mortgages to pay, they have families to support. And it is unrealistic to expect them to adjust at such short notice. They really need some help now. And I would urge the Minister to continue to do all he can to find a way of getting help to these fishermen as soon as we can. And secondly, to work with the fishermen in Cornwall and indeed elsewhere towards seeing a pollack quota return as soon as possible so that we can have a sustainable fisheries for pollack going forward. So I thank the Minister again for all that he's been doing. I look forward to his response to this debate and to continue to work with him and my colleagues to find solutions to these challenges to help the fishermen that I represent and ensure that they have a viable future.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. And